This week's episode is brought to you by Patreon supporter Doc Kennedy. If you'd like to learn how you can support the podcast on a small, recurring monthly donation, just log on to schooloflaughs.com/PATREON. Thanks, Doc.
Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast, brought to you by schooloflaughs.com. Whether you're an aspiring comedian, a part-time pro, or a speaker who wants to become funnier, this is the podcast for you. We'll break down tools, tips, and techniques to help you get bigger, better, and more bookable. And now, here's the show.
Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast. Rik Roberts here. And on today's episode is part 2, where Joel Byers from the Hot Breath podcast picks my brain for a little while about how I got started and what motivated me and all the different directions I've taken comedy in these 28 some odd years of stand-up comedy. So if you enjoyed last week where I talked to Joel, you know he's a good-hearted guy, got a good insight into comedy. He's going to let that insight run all over my brain in this episode and find out some stuff about me you probably didn't know. Hopefully it's not boring. Hopefully you can learn a couple of takeaways. And if you're listening to this on the release date, November 1st, yeah, that's a Wednesday, tonight I'll be at Third Coast Comedy Club recording my new album. It'll be a new album, a collection of kind of some favorite bits and some new things, and I need some laughs there in the audience to make it happen. So come on down, Third Coast Comedy Club, 7:30 p.m. Along with me, Brian Bates will be opening the show. Going to be a fun time. Tickets are just $10. All right, let's get into this week's episode with Joel Byers picking my brain. Let's go. It's rolling, buddy.
It's rolling. Rik Roberts said rolling in his Woodstock shirt, of course.
Yeah, how about that?
You're perfect.
You know,
Yeah.
I got this shirt. My wife got it for me from Walmart.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was in Walmart one day running there to get a SD card, and I thought, man, that's a cool Woodstock shirt. It's like a replica of the old one.
Yeah.
And so my birthday was coming up in August. And she goes, what do you want? I'm like, man, I saw this shirt at Walmart. I mean, I don't know if you got $7.77 or $8.88 to spend on me, but I'll take it. And yeah, I love it. I'll get all these compliments on the shirt when I'm out and about.
It's awesome. Did you ever go to actual Woodstock?
Not that old, man.
Oh, I knew you were an
Yeah.
old hippie, though.
Yeah, I made it to a few concerts back in the day, but I'd say the closest thing to Woodstock that I made it to would have been driving by Bonnaroo on the way down to Atlanta.
Just got a contact high from
Yeah,
being
that's
by
all
Bonnaroo.
I needed. You know,
Yeah.
you hear little Dave Matthews come through the air, and like, okay, I'm good.
Well, this is so exciting, man. I'm such a fan of you.
Well, thanks.
And I feel like we share a lot of the similar sensibilities and passion for comedy, and it's really an honor to be in your lair here.
What do you think?
You have like your own office.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Bat Cave in a way, right? For comedians.
So you're like a professional comedian with like an office.
Isn't that crazy?
That's what George Carlin had too, right? He had his own office.
I think he did. Yeah, mine came out of the need, especially when my kids were even younger. And when they were babies, that just, would just throw down and stress out and scream all day long. I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta go somewhere. So for like a year, I would go to like the Marriott and just sit in the lobby because they had free Wi-Fi and they had a Starbucks in there. And so I would go for 3 or 4 hours and just kind of focus. And after a while, I'm like, I'm tired of lugging that stuff around. And I started teaching classes outside of Zanies. I thought, well, if I got an office that was big enough to have 8 or 12 people in here, I could do it here. And so I found this place, and it's just been a real good thing.
You teach out of here?
Sometimes, yeah. Bigger classes I teach downtown at SIR, which is Studio Instrument and Rentals, which is a place where bands go to get tuned up for a recording, a CD, or going on the road. But they have these great 4-hour blocks. You can rent a facility, and they've got the microphones, they've got projectors, screens, all that jazz.
Oh, okay.
So to make it more convenient for my students, I do it down there. But if I do a weekend one or something, I'll do it up here, so I don't have to fight traffic.
And you play music too, don't you?
I do a little guitar. I've got a few CDs. I think I'm getting ready to record my 9th or 10th CD. I'm not sure how many.
Are you 9th or 10th?
Yeah.
Whoa, dude.
Been at it since '92. So.
Will you start right after college?
Yeah, I had a job right out of college. Had a couple of like little jobs, and then went to an open mic one night. Long story short, I didn't know it was for comedy, and then I found out it was for comedy when I got done, and I got bit by the bug, and a year later, I was done with civilian life and head straight into comedy.
You enlisted into comedy.
I did, man, with an improv group, which was great because when I signed up with them, I had 35, 40 weeks booked right away. And then that got me into clubs doing improv, and they would sometimes, lot of guys in the improv group didn't want to host the show because it was not, you're not as funny as a host. I'm like, let me host it. And so I worked on my stand-up chops, and then at the end of the week, I'm like, hey, can I come back and MC sometime?
Oh.
And so they really kind of bought my ticket in.
You're always a savvy businessman.
Well, I think just out of desperation, because I really didn't want to go back to my 2 or 3 little jobs that I had.
What were they?
Well, the real job, I had a short-term real job at Simon & Schuster book publishing division in Columbus, Ohio. And it was basically data entry and running reports across the internet. I didn't know it was the internet back in 91, but that's what it was.
I was wondering if what was the internet then.
Yeah, it was weird, man. And I messed that up so much that they didn't mind when I left. They're like, all right, our productivity's going up and we're going to hit the profits this year.
When did you start hitting profits in comedy? How long did that whole thing take?
That's a good question. The first year that I was full-time, I was with the improv group. We had 5 guys on the road and 2 other guys that stayed back. So we had 7 in the group, plus a business manager and a rehearsal space to pay for. So we were cutting each week like 8 ways. But I was still able to come out with $200 or $300 a week, So luckily early on, my only expenses were like a truck payment. That's like $150. And I split an apartment with 2 other comics. That was $150 each. And whatever I spent on cigarettes or, pasta and chicken. There's a lot of pasta and chicken. You go get the rotisserie chicken on Monday, and then you'd eat a good chunk of that. Then the next day, you take some slabs off of it, throw it in the pasta. By Wednesday, you kind of restart the cycle.
Yeah, I was always big on the Publix BOGO, the buy one, get ones on the pasta. I would load up on that stuff.
Yeah, because Publix isn't cheap, man.
No, but buy one, get one free.
You got to take advantage of that.
Can't pass it up.
That brings it down to normal prices.
Yeah. Okay, so it started out as improv, and was that in Ohio?
Yeah, based out of Columbus, Ohio, out of the Funny Bone up there is kind of where we got our start. And then, at the time, that improv group had 3 or 4 weekly gigs on the Ohio State campus. So even if I didn't go on the road with them, you'd stay back and do Ruby Tuesdays, which was not the place that we all know as Ruby Tuesdays, but a little bar there. And then we did a weekend club called the Hey Hey Club, and then we do a few other things. And on the nights those weren't going on, there was open mics every night of the week except for Friday and Saturday.
Oh, you make comedy sound so easy.
There was a plethora of places to perform, which there are in Atlanta now, like where you're from. And here in Nashville, there's something almost every night of the week.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so you can have an idea on Sunday. There's 3 open mics on Sunday, 2 on Monday. So by the end of Monday, you kind of knew if the joke had any traction at all.
Yeah.
And then you tweak it as you went. So you're able to build up your hour a lot quicker than just doing like 1 open mic a week.
Do you still do like a bunch of open mics?
Not a bunch, but leading up to this CD recording, I've been kind of hitting a few of them, just kind of getting the dead wood chopped out of the material. Because basically, right now, I work on new material in my corporate events, and corporate audiences are different than a comedy club audience.
Yep.
And so you can be a little bit wordier there and tell a story, and they enjoy it. But a comedy club, they're more like, come on, let's go. So then hitting a few open mics to kind of tighten it up.
So you start in 91. I was not a math major. So how many years is that?
I'm like 27 years into it.
Dude.
I know.
Oh my, I'm 29. That's crazy.
Oh man.
No, I didn't mean to make you feel old. I'm just thinking about all like the experience you've had, because I've been doing comedy a little over 7.5 years. So just another 2 decades.
When you were 3, I was full time. That's crazy.
Were you doing the Barney Fife that early on?
About 3 or 4 years into it, I think, is when I started doing the Barney Fife. In the improv group, they had a couple of scenes where you had to be a celebrity.
Oh, okay.
Jeff Gage, one of our guys, was Charles Nelson Riley from the Match Game and all that stuff. Another guy would rotate between like Ross Perot and George Bush, the first one, and different guys. And one guy was dead on Paul Schaefer. And another guy did Sammy Davis. They're like, you ought to do one, man, so we can rotate you in the scene. And so I looked through the prop bag, and there was like a bus driver's hat. And I just kind of cocked it sideways and walked out one night and like, how y'all doing? And the place just went crazy. And they're like, dude, we have to bring you out last now because that's such a popular guy that you're doing. And then over the years, I've kind of, I've got a corporate, I call it a program. It's not a motivational speech, but it's a thing called the Mayberry Method, where I use principles of the Andy Griffith Show in business. And so I bust into that thing in front of a corporate group as Barney Fife. I come through the back door, in uniform, blow my whistle. What's going on in here?
What?
And then I pull out citations. I get inside information on people from the company. And so I'm like, where's Bill Wilson at? You double parked your Jeep over there in the handicap zone. And so they dig all that stuff. And then after I give them their tickets, I take the hat off and ease into the speech or program, whatever you want to call it. So that's like, it evolved from that one little bus driver's hat to like a corporate program where people get credits, like continuing education credits for attending my thing.
So are you Barney Fife the whole time, or you start off as Barney and then you're like, well, let me motivate you now, children?
Yeah, I'll start off as Fife, and then I'll reintroduce myself, because the first group wanted me to do the whole thing as Barney Fife.
Right.
And about 11 minutes into it, I'm like, I don't think I need to be talking like this anymore. And people are like, thank you. So I kick it off, and then I have a 5-minute stand-up piece that's in my regular comedy show that I end with. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of comedy throughout. But that way I put the hat back on at the end. I'm Barney Fife as I'm walking out the room.
Do you ever get tired of it? Or
no, it's weird. Like, when I first did it, it was out of necessity as far as a corporate program, because they had hired me to do stand-up. And this was like in 2008 when the economy tanked. And they called me up and said, man, we want you to come, but we can't put comedian on the check. They're going to kill us if we do that. If we put speaker, we can still have you come in. And the guy, this is my favorite line ever. He goes, can you not be funny for an hour? I'm like, 24 in a row, my friend. He said, work in some jokes, but if you can talk about 2 or 3 points, we'll have you. And so he suggested productivity and time management and goal setting. I'm like, well, you know what? I could learn as I'm putting this thing together what I should be doing. Mm-hmm. And so the first one I did just that. I read every book I could on productivity, on time management, on setting goals. And then I found episodes of the Andy Griffith Show that coincided with those topics. And then I found jokes in my act that were about me not doing something correctly or me not managing my time correctly, which we all have jokes. Every joke we have is about a bigger topic if we dig into it. Mm-hmm. And so I'd make sure that I had those laughs as well as the Andy Griffith reference and statistics and information to back it up. And the crazy thing is, I did that and I thought it'd be kind of a one-off. And at that first one, I had a lady come up from the Department of Agriculture. She's like, I'd like to hire you for 4 events to do that program you just did. I'm like, I was really just winging it. I was, seated my pants the whole way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this might be something here. Uh-huh. And so I kept doing more research and adding different segments to it. But that first year that I did all the research, I'm like, well, I should be, batching activities. You know what that is? Uh-huh. So like you could check your email all day long, or you could wait till like 4 o'clock, go through there, delete all the junk, answer 3 or 4 real quickly, and you're done. I'm like, well, that would save me like an hour a day probably. Editing podcasts, I usually record 2 or 3, then I'll edit them all in one day when I've kind of got the softwares open and I'm in the mindset. What else do I do that way? Writing comedy. I'll wait till I have a big chunk of time and do a bunch of it and block everything else out. But just little things like that I started learning. And that first year, 1 year from the first program I did, my business increased 38%.
I love how you know the exact number.
I know exactly, because that year was so crazy because it was a horrible year for the economy. And it was my best year ever at that point. And, I had 3 or 4 conferences just flat out canceled because they couldn't afford to put them on. So the first quarter, I'd lost a few gigs, and then it kind of got some traction. And the speaking thing kind of was a nice way to augment the comedy stuff.
Yeah. And approaching a job as a speaker, does that pay more than just being a comedian?
Yeah, they tend to have a bigger budget for it because they have a kind of a quantifiable return on their investment.
Gotcha.
Whereas a comedy, like, okay, we laughed a little bit, but now we're back to work. Mm-hmm. There's groups that realize the importance of comedy. And I think the groups that hire me for my motivational stuff see that they will laugh throughout it, but they're also going to have some what they call takeaway points.
Right.
I give them, I boil down 3 takeaways for each topic that I have. And I usually do 3 little topics an hour.
And you said it was productivity, goal setting,
time management.
And time management.
Yeah, that's the top 3. Then I've also over the years developed for clients the customer service approaches, a handful of other things. Leadership is a big one. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of grown into learning about that. So, I can do a 2.5 hour session if they need me to.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, hold on. What am I trying to ask here? I'm trying to ask something about me specifically, really, just because I've been doing comedy about a little over 7.5 years, like I said, and I would say this year, maybe in the past couple months, made the shift from like, all right, I just want to get as funny as possible and just consuming open mics and just doing as much stage time as possible. And now I'm like, okay, because like as a comedian, you have two jobs. The show is a job and then the business is a job. So I've been working on the show for like 7 years now. And now I'm trying to pivot and shift into focusing on the business and trying to help organize my day more, be more efficient with my entire like just game plan and goal setting and all that. So really, any advice you have on that end, I would really greatly appreciate.
Yeah, I think that I call it defending your day in my program, but
okay,
you should know tonight before you go to bed what tomorrow's going to look like. Now, I didn't do that for a long time. Up until 2008, I was taking phone calls. I was running off to gigs. Occasionally, I would send off my avails, but it was just kind of keeping up with stuff. But to get ahead of it, you really got to lay out a plan. So, most days as I'm headed off to bed, I'll write out a list of what I'm going to do before noon. And then if I have time, what I do in the afternoon. Right now when I'm home, I just have 2 hours in the afternoon because my little daughter gets off the school bus at 2. And I'm lucky enough to where I can be home and at age where I can just kind of hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And we just play, we color, we do chalk, we do whatever. So I try to get all my work done in the morning. But you should think about that, what you absolutely need to get to. Writing should always be in the mix each week, even as you're working on your business. But, you probably want to think long term and then back up what you need to do short term. So if 5 years from now you want to be featuring everywhere or headlining everywhere or wherever people listening might need to move up as well, how are you going to get there? You need X amount of minutes for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You need probably double. I always say have double the time. If you're doing a feature spot, have a killer hour and you're going to crush anywhere because there'll be audience that show up where that you'll need that other 30 minutes of material.
It shrinks real quick.
It does. Yeah. And it's hard to be patient for that when you first start because I need to move up because when I move to feature, I double my pay. When I move to headliner, I double my pay. But you never move up quick. You don't move up as quick as you want ever. So just get used to that right now. And it's way better to be asked by somebody, hey, you want to headline next time through, instead of you begging to headline next time through.
Boom. So
keep crushing that material to where no matter who the audience is, you're able to pull within your jokes the right set for them, And then just also where you want to be lifestyle-wise, you're not married, right?
Oh, I am married.
You are married.
I'm married as of April 1st.
Oh, congratulations,
this year,
man.
Yeah.
On April Fool's Day.
Exactly.
Worked out great. She still doesn't know it was a joke.
She trusts me. That was the big thing.
So you want to talk to her about where you guys want to be in 5 years and what she's doing to help get you two as a couple to that point and what you need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It might look like more local gigs that pay better, or it might be more gigs out of town that pay better and less running around every single night of the week doing open mic, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then, other business stuff you could go on for days, but, researching I always call it your ultimate audience. Who do you want to be performing for?
Oh.
Find out where they're at and go there instead of trying to hope they show up at the comedy club.
Mm-hmm.
My ideal audience is rural America, hardworking blue collar people. I do fine in front of bankers and that kind of stuff too, but anybody that sweats a little bit during the day, that's my ideal audience. Farmers, people in ag, that kind of stuff. So when I have on my focus list for tomorrow to kind of, you can call it prospecting or, looking for potential clients, I know who I'm looking for and I can spend time doing that.
How early do you wake up?
It's been a little weird this year because my wife just started working and she's still getting the kids ready, but I'm typically up at 8. Sometimes I'm up by 7.
Okay.
Okay. For a comedian, that's like horrifying, does it?
Oh, I mean, I'm up early though.
Yeah.
Because I like to. I've heard like time blocking is effective, and I've experimented with different ways of like, okay, from 8 to 10, I'm focusing on just writing or whatever, or I'm focusing on the podcast, but. Then I may do that for like a week and then it just like falls off, and then some days especially the beauty of because I'm a full-time comedian, and the beauty of it is you have the freedom to do whatever you want, but the ugly part of it is you have the freedom to do whatever you shouldn't as well.
Yeah, you got to be disciplined for sure.
Totally. So I'm working on like having that organization and treating it like a job.
Yeah.
You know.
I'll tell you one thing I learned too that is probably more helpful than, planning stuff out the day before, is knowing your zones, like when you're in the zone, when you're out of the zone. I'm never in the zone at 8 o'clock in the morning. Usually by 10, I've had my tea, my breakfast, and then my brain starts to kick in. So I'll never try to write first thing in the morning anymore. I'll wait till I've done a couple busy work things, answered a few emails that came in overnight or what have you. And then I usually, if my kids aren't home or anything, from 10 till noon or 12:30, I turn off my phone, turn off the internet. I'm a computer working or whatever, but I'm not and that's when I'm writing.
Okay.
Or where I'm being creative. And then when I feel like, okay, I've exhausted the creative part, I'll go back and do tasks, which is answer an email or phone calls and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, but whenever you're like fully locked in for the day, some people are afternoon people, some people are evening, night. That's when you want to focus on your creativity, because that's when your brain is firing on all cylinders. If you're trying to be creative when it's just like, ugh. Like today, I was really wanting to get a little bit of writing done. My kids are home for fall break, and I did a little bit, but I'm like, I'm just not feeling it right now. I'm like, I'm going to be creative a little later on in the podcast with Joe. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mow the yard, because I can be brainless for 90 minutes and get that job done.
Okay.
Instead of having to do it tomorrow the only time I have tomorrow is when I'm supposed to be focused. So I don't want to be mowing the yard then.
It's just following your instincts.
Yeah, kind of like your body rhythms and that kind of thing, and not working against it, but just kind of going with it.
Yeah.
And
another thing I admire you for is your business savvy. And even just hearing you from the beginning, it seemed like you kind of had that. Were you a business major?
No, and looking back, I really wish I would have taken some business classes.
Okay.
In college, it was communications. Like I was hanging around the radio station, doing shifts, and the TV station.
Okay.
Any job where you could still get on the air with a mullet,
Right, washing it with egg whites, right?
Yeah,
Weren't you all about it? Yeah.
I was all about it until I saw the George Carlin special. Then I was throwing stuff in the street and burning it.
Wait, what happened?
Well, I think if it was in college or right after I got out of college, I could look up the date. But George Carlin had this HBO special, and the big push in the whole special was a big segment he had on the environment and how I'm tired of these people. Let's save the planet. How arrogant are you that you think this little thing that's going to die off in 60 years is going to save this planet that's been here for billions of years, And he just went, item by item of why I was stupid for recycling and everything else. And like the next day, I started throwing bottles in the street. I'm like, he's right. Like one of his things is like, maybe the planet just needs us to make plastic, and when it gets enough, it's going to belch us off of this thing or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And so that was the first time also that I realized comedy could have a point. And a good comedian could change your point of view. I think a lot of comics now, I know that a lot of them are trying to be social issue oriented, but they're not looking at the part of being funny while they're doing it. You know what I mean?
I was just thinking that. Seriously.
I mean, Trump is a super easy target.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't, I'm not a political guy, but come on, can we do better, But if I just yell at Trump's an idiot, I'm not offering any solutions at the same time.
Right.
If I'm vaguely offering solutions to Trump, that's still not really helpful because he's not going to be paying attention to me. So if I need to inform the audience of my opinion, but then give them an option, or else you've just left them in the same spot and you've hyped them up and got them angry. So it's just a weird thing. But Carlin was the first guy that kind of clued me in that you could do both. And I didn't always agree with a lot of his points, But that particular episode, that HBO special, I'm like, daggone, he's good. This is top level stuff right here.
Yeah. So then you're doing radio and all that, communications degree, and then you decided to do improv. When did this business sense kick in? Because it took me pretty much 7.5 years to be like, oh, I should make money at this. It seemed like you had it from the jump.
I don't know. Like, money isn't the most important thing to me, but I learned really early on that you got to work hard to get it. So even when I was in high school and college, when I was back in Kentucky over the summers, I was working something like 85 hours a week. I had a full-time job at a horse farm, a loading dock at a department store, and then a second horse farm I would work on the weekend or do tobacco. So it got to the point one summer I almost fell asleep and drove off a little country road. I'm like, okay, I got to pull back a little bit. I never minded working hard. And I kind of just got lucky as far as like working smart. In college, I knew I didn't know much about finances and stuff. So one of my jobs at the radio station was to do a 5-minute daily, what did I call it? It's a little money segment. And Big Money from Rush would be the intro song. And then, Big Money from Rush. And then I would just like pull down the stock numbers for the day and read a couple financial stories, and because I wasn't taking a class for that in college, but we had the UPI and the AP wire feed coming right through the radio station. So I just started learning a little bit about it, learning about how to invest and that kind of stuff. And it just always seemed like, it's simple. It's like if you spend less than you earn and you got some money at the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And then, with comedy, with that improv group, like they used to say the same thing, like, you're a businessman first, because we would pay ourselves, say we're doing a 7-day trip. When we got in the van, everybody got $70, $10 a day to eat, which back then still wasn't much back then, but you could get fast food and you could live off it. Well, I'd put 35 in my pocket and never spend it. And I'd live off of $35 a week on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would do if we were at a hotel or a condo, usually at a hotel, I had like a little sandwich maker, kind of like a George Foreman grill, and a cooler. And these guys would roll into town. They go to like Arby's or McDonald's or whatever. I go to the grocery store and buy lunch meat, cheese, pizza sauce, onions. And then after the show, 10:30, when they're all got the munchies and stuff, I'd fire up my grill and be selling sandwiches for $3 a piece.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it was just like,
whoa.
I don't know why, but it's just like survival.
Yeah. Yeah,
Money
is something I struggle with, even discussing money. And I think a lot of comics struggle with even understanding what their price even is. If somebody's like, how much would you charge for this? You're like, $100. And they're like, oh, great. That's awesome. We were thinking it was going to be $1,000. And you're like, blah, 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 blah. How do you even name your price?
Yeah. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. So, one person simply said, hey, if you want to make $50,000 a year, you need to make $1,000 a week. If you're doing 3 shows a week, make sure you're charging at least $350. You can do it that way. Comedy's not that crisp and clean. It'd be great if you could just break it down that way. But you can look at, I think you should look at what you need, not only to survive for a year, but also to be able to put something away. And as you develop your skills, if you're not able to headline yet or feature yet and you're only emceeing, what else can you do while you're emceeing to earn some money? Now, there's a lot of things you could do. You could drive Uber or Lyft. I know a couple of comics that do that.
Yeah.
So in their off hours, or even after the shows where you're still kind of wound up, they're just driving around a random town. They don't have to live in that town. You just flip on the button and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
So you can put away several $100 a week doing that. Merchandise, of course, selling merch. When I was emceeing, I would sell my business cards.
What?
I know. Isn't that crazy?
For how much?
I'd sell them for $1. So when I was emceeing, I would close it with a little Barney Fife joke. And so I made these business cards that says, you've been deputized by, Fife or whatever. And then I bought these little badges. I think they were like 15 cents a piece. And then I took a hole puncher, punched holes in my business card, put the little badge in there, and then I'd sign it. And I would do my little joke at the end of the show. I'm like, if you want to be deputized by Fife after the show, I get you a badge for $1. And so I was making like, sometimes $100 on a Friday night, and they had my business card as they walked out.
What?
Nobody ever hired me. I was a horrible MC, but that was like, find some way to make a couple extra bucks while you're there.
Yeah, yeah.
I had one friend that was a carpenter, and he would go around doing comedy, but he'd look at the club when he walked in. He's like, oh, they could use some help here. And he would just tell the manager of the club, hey, I don't know if you see this piece of rotten wood over here, but I can replace that for you and help you with this and fix a couple of these tables. Just whatever your skill set is, see if there's somebody there to buy it. I would take my weed eater with me when I emceed.
Your weed eater?
My weed eater. Yeah. So I'd take my weed eater. Yeah. I never told anybody this. So most comedy clubs had a parking lot that was just horrific. Or they didn't have a lot of grass, but they had weeds right in front or around the edges or out back. And so after the first or second night, once I got to know the manager a little bit, I'm like, hey man, you mind? I could hit my weed eater on this lot for you for like $30 or something like that and knock it out. Oh man, would you? Even here in Nashville, Zany's, they got a house close to where the club is. And so I would ask Brian, the guy that runs the club and owns Zany's, if you need somebody to trim the hedges, just let me know. I've got a hedge clippers. I can do it. So pick up a few extra bucks.
Whoa.
Then eventually, hopefully your gigs get better and you don't have to do stuff like that.
Right.
But 24 hours in a day, you're only working for one of them. Go find some work. A lot of comics like the lifestyle of sleeping in. You can still sleep in to noon and go trim a hedge from 2 to 4.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, whatever your skill set is, find a way. Now you can write for other people. It's real easy on the internet to communicate. You can edit videos for people if you're good at that.
Mm-hmm.
Make posters, banner art, JPEGs, GIFs. There's just all kinds of little stuff that not everybody knows how to do, but a lot of comics know how to do it because you self-promote. So why not I always say find a comic that's ahead of you where you want to be and see what they don't have on their website and see if you can help them put it on there. Maybe you know how to design a website because you've done it for yourself. Look up your favorite comic. He doesn't have a very good website. See if you can work that deal out. There's a guy here in town, Brett Brock. Do you know Brett?
I don't know.
Brett took my comedy class a while back. He was in the military, retired, and he's a tremendous artist. And he loves comics. So he started just voluntarily drawing posters for Bert Kreischer.
Right. Yeah.
For Doug Stanhope, for a bunch of different comics. But he would just say, hey, he'd hit him up on Twitter or Facebook or wherever. I got this art I did for you. Use it for whatever you want. Use it for T-shirts, promo, whatever. I just enjoy your comedy.
Mm-hmm.
He'd do that every week, send him a different thing. And now I think both those guys have every single show poster for every single week they do. They're doing it through Brett.
Whoa.
So he's getting to know comics. I don't know how much he's working with them or gets to interact with them besides that, but he's using a skill that he's got to get a little deeper into comedy.
Yeah, that's what the guy who did all my stuff. He did a bunch of corporate illustrations and then he transitioned into comedy and his name is actually Comedy Artwork. And I caught him at the very beginning where I was like, "Oh man, I dig this avatar." I was like, "Could you make me one and I'll shout you out on the podcast and all this?" And then now he's done all my logos. He's done show logos, my podcast logo, and since then he's grown to be doing stuff for Judd Apatow and Joe List and Mark Norman and all this. So it's cool to see these people just doing this DIY,
Yeah, no, that's cool. Everything is so shareable now.
Mm-hmm.
And you're one Twitter friend away from contacting somebody else on your big list of contacts.
Yeah.
There's really no excuse not to find the people you want to be connected with and connect.
Yeah.
They may not connect back or they might think you're crazy or whatever, but if you offer something for free and don't ask for anything in return, they're more likely to go, "Hey, that was cool."
Exactly.
And they'll remember you.
Yeah.
You might get a couple free tickets and do a show or something like that down the road, but if you're just doing it because you like them, it comes across.
And you did it all without agent or manager or anything?
Yeah, early on I tried more than I should have early on to try to get some managers and stuff when I wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got ready, I kind of learned how to do the business part of it and didn't necessarily need it, And then a couple times I shot myself in the foot when I had opportunities, where I was just being honest and I wouldn't have changed anything, but I didn't realize back then that people really listened. For example, I was doing a showcase for Aspen, or it was one of the festivals,
Mm-hmm.
It's in Columbia, Missouri with, guys that you may or may not know. Mark Gross, who was a writer and producer on Rodney Carrington's show and then on Mike and Molly.
Oh, okay.
And now he's on another one of the big shows. But so he was on the showcase, a few other guys. And before the show started, I was sitting there talking to whoever's in charge of the showcase. They're like, "So if you got into this festival, would you consider moving to Los Angeles?" I'm like, "Never in a million years." He's like, "What?" He's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Nah." So I'm more of a Midwest guy, I said I wouldn't mind doing sets, of course, or whatever, but I think I'd never live there because I'd done sets there before at the Improv Group.
Yeah,
and we've gone to places with them, and just the whole vibe of people looking past your shoulder to see who they should be talking to instead of you.
Right.
Just that vibe. Like, I'm never going to be an LA guy.
Yeah.
And so there's stuff like that where they're like, "Oh, he doesn't even want this." They do these same kind of festival auditions at Zany's, and I go on last and do 20 minutes of local jokes. Just like, you know what I mean? Because
not even thinking
after
about
15, 20 comics, everything's been covered.
Yeah.
So the only thing left the audience is going to laugh at is local stuff.
Yeah.
But there was nothing there that the judges or whoever, the talent scouts, could really take back and say, "This guy was good."
Well, how high were your goals? Because especially starting out, you're like, I want to be Richard Pryor and I want to da-da-da-da and own the world with my comedy. But you're 27 years in. Like, did you have these big goals and now you just kind of dial them in like a more specific direction as you progress? What is that whole
Early
mindset?
on, my only goal early on was to not have to go back to a day job.
Okay.
Early on. And so really, I think even during my first year full-time, I still occasionally delivered a pizza or something like that. But after that, it's been full-time. So I got that pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's always been about lifestyle. I think for me, my next big goal wasn't to move to LA or New York. It's like, could I support a family doing comedy? Because that's the two things I want, a family, and I want to be able to still tell jokes. And so I was able to do that. And so now my goal is, can I do comedy and at the same time provide a benefit for somebody, whether it's raising money for a cause, bringing focus to an issue. I'm big about doing fundraisers and stuff right now. So I've been blessed where I can do comedy full time. I've got a family, and now it's just like there should be a reason why I'm still doing this.
Yeah.
So I get more out of it by doing it for somebody else than just to go and do a gig and cash a check.
Yeah, aren't you like the president of like the Christian Comedy Coalition, or what's it called?
Coalition's a good word. But
it's not coalition. I'm sorry.
Association.
Association. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that was an interesting thing too. I'm trying to think of how many years I've been in it. Probably since 2009. And that started with Shonda Pierce, who was the president at the time. She helped found the whole thing many years before that. But she saw I was teaching comedy classes at Zanies. She said, would you mind coming down and teaching a class for our Christian comedians? We can always get better. And some of these guys think they're funny. Some of these guys are telling stories, but they don't know where the punchline is, just like any group of people. And so I went down, and part of that was they always kick off the conference on Sunday night with a showcase, like some of the best Christian comics. And I was blown away, like how talented these guys were. And I'm like, wow, I should check into this group. Because I'm a Christian. I grew up, I definitely strayed for many years in my 20s to where I was just a horrible person.
Oh, how horrible.
I never killed anybody. But,
okay.
But besides that, just like pretty aimless. Am I living the dream or am I like walking in a nightmare kind of thing?
Okay.
And so I thought this was a great opportunity to not only get back to my roots in my faith, but to be accountable to some people too. We don't like chase each other down and yell at us. I saw you swearing. It's not like that. But you've got more people you can call up if you're struggling with something and help them out.
Mm-hmm.
And so a few years into it, about 8 years into it or so, opportunity came for me to kind of be in charge of it for a couple of years. And it's a volunteer deal. So you're looking at hundreds of hours a year to kind of put into it and put the conferences together. But it's been so rewarding, and to see the impact. Like, I know when I'm teaching comedy to the Christian comedians, for sure, 90% of those people are going to be doing shows that are outreach events for churches, which means church is going to put on a clean comedy night. People who've never been to church before might pop in and check it out, or you can invite a friend that doesn't attend church, and they can just see churches aren't cults, not all of them. There's crazies everywhere. So I know that by them being better at telling jokes, the comedy show might get more people there, and somebody might find out about Jesus Christ because of a comedian.
Right. Yeah.
So my efforts with that group it's really rewarding to see the light bulb go off and people having better shows and getting more traction. And then a lot of the people there too do anything from churches to, there's a group that I work with called New Missions, and they start schools in Haiti and help kids get clothes for school, get to school, get fed at school, and get their books. And they've been doing that for like 30 years to where now some of those kids are teaching the classes and preaching in churches there. So you see the long-term impact of things. Other Christian comics do recovery nights. So a lot of Christians come to Christ because they had a really dark bottom. They bottomed out and they needed help.
Right.
And that's kind of where God reaches for you, because it's for the first time in your life, like, I can't do it by myself.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of comics will do shows for people that are recovering from drugs or alcohol. So just being able to help them connect the dots and get to those people who need it, like, that's just super rewarding. More than just going, I'm a headliner now. Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, but you have to have material, obviously, to do that, and you have to be good at your craft to, hold down an audience for an hour and a half, or whatever it might be.
Still got to be funny.
Funny.
Whatever your message is, it's got to be funny.
It's got to be tight, and you just got to know what you're doing.
Yep.
So yeah, I think the ultimate goal for me is just to keep on learning, get better at what I'm doing, but empower as many people to get to that spot too, where they can turn it around and give it away and do something for somebody else.
Well, you're doing that with so many different platforms, man. I first discovered you on your podcast, School of Laughs, and then just checking out everything you've done from not only, you don't even just do comedy classes, you've broken it down into like you have a writing class, a performance class, a business class, you have online classes, your podcast itself is a class. And you really, School of Laughs really inspired Hot Breath to come along. Like,
is that right?
The podcast started out because I'm from Atlanta, still live there. Like I'm kind of in the same mindset with LA or New York, is like, I'll go if they're calling me, if it's for a job, but I'm just not going to move and start over. There's too much opportunity in Atlanta. And we had 10 comics on Last Comic Standing one summer. So I was like, oh man, I should like capture this. So I interviewed all of them, and then I was like, well, I guess I should keep it going. And then just started interviewing Atlanta comics, and then it's since grown into just interviewing comics, and then it's since grown really from listening to yours, and you started interviewing like social media people, different bookers and club owners, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess there's more to our artists. And yeah, you can be comedy minded, but you can learn from everyone. So that's what the podcast has evolved into, is just interviewing everyone that I think has an expertise that I can extract, and then you can synthesize it into whatever your field is. So that's really School of Laughs. I'm here to tell you I stole it. I stole School of Laughs from you, but it's really been an inspiration.
Well, thanks, man. You do have a killer scene in Atlanta, and I like your style of interview, and it's pretty laid back, and you've had good guests on as well. You know?
It's been great.
But I think you're right. There's more. We can talk to comics all day long, and it's going to be enjoyable. But occasionally, you do need to learn how to have a social media strategy, or talk to the booker about colleges so you know what to do if you want to get into college book, And I just think back when I first started, there was nothing like that. I mean, even listening to Mark Maron, which I love his podcast, he's not asking bookers how a guy who's an open mic can get into, and so that's like if I can help a little stepping stone, somebody out there, I may never meet him, but it's just like, the podcast was like, what did I wish I knew back then? And what do I need to know now? If I cover either of those things each week, then it's definitely worth doing. And it's like a digital green room for people who don't have a club close by, That's part of it. So yeah, it's been a cool thing to do, and I'm glad you found it. Glad you're doing yours.
Yeah, dude, I've been learning a lot. And it's funny, you've been doing it 27 years. A lot of these, I mean, for lack of a better word, I guess seasoned comedians are like, this technology and these kids, like, do you have any of that in you? Or is it just like, oh, cool, we just keep evolving?
What I learned, and I think from interviewing these social media people, was you can't do everything. Like there's comics. John Chris is a great example. Guy that's great on doing short vines or short Facebook posts, and they're short, they're one subject, they're shareable, and that he's killer at that. My thing is more of a podcast, a little bit more long form. Some people Instagram heroes, and I don't know how you do a story on Instagram, but people have Instagram stories, they have Facebook stories, they have Facebook Live, lots of opportunities. But if you try to do all of them, you're going to run yourself ragged, So I try to focus on like the online class. I try to put a lot of effort into that. The podcast, I do some mentoring, one-on-one Skype type stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really more focused on helping others, because I always benefit from it. Some of the people that were in my classes, like something I never thought about starting out, but they have a day job, and then their day job needed somebody to come in and be funny at their Christmas party, or a trainer so I've gotten roundabout gigs in different ways from just helping somebody out down the road. But you never think that far ahead. You know what I mean?
Seems like a lot of your connections have just come organically.
Yeah,
just being a nice person.
Well, when you're not hilarious, you need to be nice. Which was a lesson I learned early on about. I told on my show before, but it's worth hearing again. I think is, if you're at the club and you're in comedy clubs only, just be the nicest guy and the most helpful person you can be throughout the week, because there's enough jerks every week. Usually on a 3-act show, there's one jerk, one guy that's kind of trying to figure out if he should be a jerk or should be nice, and there's one nice guy. And as soon as you figure out which one of those you are, you may want to change or not. But there was one club I was working at, and I was looking at the list of upcoming comics, and I'm like, oh man, that hack's headliner here next week. Right behind me was the club manager.
Ugh.
So the other comic's like, X-nay, It's just like an old episode of Hogan's Here. Like, he's standing right behind me, isn't he? And so the club manager goes, well, I book people that I enjoy being around, and you used to be one of those people.
Oh.
So unless you straighten out your attitude, you won't be on this sheet next time.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, message received. So I wasn't being mean to that person in their face, but the attitude, she didn't need the attitude at the club. And really, what am I to gain? This also at the same time I learned, I don't get any funnier by calling that guy a hack.
Mm-hmm.
If I spend a whole day in a condo, if you've ever been in a condo for a week with comics, a third of the time they're complaining about bookers, clubs, or other comics. During that 6 hours, you could have been writing, resting, or getting better.
Yep.
But it's just so easy to start slipping down that slope of talking about other comics in a negative way. Just work on your own thing.
A big teacher is failure, for sure.
Big time.
And something all comedians do is bomb along the way. And I ask all my comedians on here an epic failure on stage, a booze story if possible. And in 27 years, there's got to be at least one gig out there that was just epic failure.
There's only one gig that wasn't.
27 years.
Yeah, it's tomorrow's gig. Maybe. We'll see. We'll find out.
I just do the Barney Five.
I think the one that was on the biggest scale was a New Year's Eve show I was doing with the Improv Group. We were in Kellogg Arena in Battle Creek. 4,000 tickets. They had us, it's an arena, so they got the floor, they got the lower level. Off of the upper level, they put a stage on scaffolding so that everybody on the other side of the arena could see us, and the people that were having dinner seated on the floor could see us. They could see us. They couldn't hear us very good.
Mm-hmm.
We were using the big Bertha sound speaker that's in the middle of Kellogg Arena with a microphone that was feeding back like every 10 seconds. And we're improv, so we're not right on the mics like a comic would be. We're 3 feet, 5 feet away. And so we got through our first 2 sketches, with a little reaction. The third scene that we did was Mr. Know-It-All, where 3 people sit down, they answer a question 1 word at a time. So like there'd be a host, he would get a question from the audience, what's the meaning of life? Mr. Know-It-All, what's the meaning of life? I think that life is all about,
Gotcha.
And you try to answer it. If you answered it even close to, something that sounded right, they would clap and laugh or whatever.
This is all with one microphone?
Yeah, so he would kind of give us, well, I guess we probably had a mic on a stand. So we would give our answer, and then like the second question goes, all right, who else has a question for Mr. Know-It-All? And like from, I don't know, as far as you could be in an arena in the corner where it echoed across the entire place, the guy goes, when does the comedy start? And the whole place goes, yeah, when does it start? And it was just like Gary Fields, who ran a great club, a couple different clubs up in Battle Creek for many years. He just came on stage and goes, guys, it's totally my fault. I should have had you in a different place, mic'd up better. You're done for the night. You still get paid. Go party. It's New Year's. Let's have a good time. And then he told everybody in the arena, he goes, hey, anybody that's here tonight, bring in your ticket to my club this weekend. You can see the guys in a real comedy club environment, and it's on us.
Oh, okay.
So, we made out okay with it, but it was just like really in front of 4,000 people. We just yelled at.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst as a group. There's a few just individually where I was doing stand-up to where it always comes down to where I wasn't aware of the situation.
Gotcha.
Like there was a guy, I was doing a one-nighter somewhere in Wisconsin probably Wisconsin. And everybody was digging the show throughout the show. The first 2 acts, I get on stage. But there's one guy at the bar that was just talking loud the whole time. On his phone. Wasn't even looking at the comedy show. And so I'd had it, like the first 2 comics didn't say anything. The crowd was noticeably disturbed. Like that side of the room couldn't enjoy the show. They kept turning and so I got on. I'm like, listen, all right, here's the deal. You guys have been real patient. You've been laughing, but I'm not going to keep on going unless this guy over here gets off the phone. What do you guys think? And they're like, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the guy turned around and goes, I've got your paycheck. He was the owner of the bar. And I'm like, we're going to just plow through it, guys. And so
that's how you start the headlining set.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because I'm a nice guy, but if I see like something not being solved, it gets under my skin. So I just went right after the guy, right off the top, and like it took me a little while to get the crowd back because they were like, should we laugh or should we let him talk quietly? Just a weird deal.
Oh, but you got the crowd. You got
the
him.
crowd was
Okay.
good.
Well, you're Rik Roberts. How you not going to get the crowd?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, but
Reel them in.
cool, man. I'm so
Dude.
happy you came through.
Thanks for having me, Rik.
Thanks, buddy. Hope you enjoyed that episode where I got the tables turned on me and was interviewed by Joel Byers, Byars. Joel has a podcast. You can check him out at Hot Breath with Joel Byers. Google that. His podcast will come up. If you enjoy the School of Laughs podcast, you're going to love his. He does a similar kind of thing, interviewing comedians and people connected to the comedy industry. Very, very cool show, and you want to give him a listen. Hey, if you are listening to this on the release date, I'm recording a new live comedy CD at Third Coast Comedy Club, downtown Nashville, at the Marathon Music Works building, 7:30 p.m. For podcast listeners, I just swung a deal this very afternoon of getting you free tickets. So if you want to come in for free, watch my show, there's no 2-drink minimum or any of that going on. It's just pure comedy tonight. I could use a few bodies in the room and a few laughs on the CD. So come on down. You can email me, or how about this? Yeah, you go ahead and email me, schooloflaughs@gmail.com, and I'll get back with more information and location and all that kind of stuff. So come on out, be part of the group, have fun. I get to meet you face to face. That's even better. Other than that, guys, that's going to wrap it for this week. Stay safe and stay funny.
Thanks for listening to the School of Laughs podcast. If you'd like to hear more School of Laughs podcasts, you can find them on iTunes and Stitcher.com. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. For information on upcoming live and online classes, visit schooloflaughs.com. Until next time, stay tuned, stay focused, and stay funny.